When it comes to quality sleep, Ashley has you covered with top mattress brands at winning prices and with special financing options available. You can snooze now and pay later. Plus, your mattress purchase helps give the gift of better sleep to children in need and U.S. Special Operations Forces. Visit your local Ashley store or shop online today and make every snooze count. Financing is subject to credit approval. See store or ashley.com for details.
Canva presents True Crime of Design. In the office, Maya spots something unusual in the presentation.
What's this?
It was an off-brand font. Her coworker explains.
I added the font. I thought it was fun.
It was not. Maya solved it with Canva.
Open up Canva, one click, and the font is on brand. Easy.
Stay on brand and solve font crimes at canva.com, the home for every brand.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me is a man that I know can fake sing better than Mariah Carey. He is the Captain.
Thank you. It's good to be seen, and it's good to see you. And all of our listeners, you're giving me emotions deeper than I ever dreamed of.
And I'm very pleased to announce that today in the garage we have a very special guest helping us with this episode, the great Mariah Carey. And to make her feel more at home, we have turned off her mic. Today, Captain, we are drinking Redacted Rye IPA by Renegade Brewing Company in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Garage grade 4 out of 5 bottle caps. Redacted is a rye IPA that is loaded with rye. Something here is awry. This is Renegade's flagship beer.
I'm glad you're cracking yourself up today.
It was a joke that I forgot that I wrote. This is Renegade's
Still
flagship
funny.
beer. It has citrusy hops and spicy rye, which is a fantastic combo, and Redacted is truly one of a kind. And this week's beer is brought to us by these truly one of a kind garage goers. We have a big shout out to Larry and Renee from Denver. Captain, I am friends with Larry and Renee on Untapped, and they are loyal listeners, and they both work for breweries. So I want you to play extra nice with Larry and Renee. So a big shout out to them, and thank you for the beer, guys.
Like your jib.
Next up, we have Rob Mack in Alberta, Canada. We also have Al from Waukee, Iowa. Next up, we have Roger the Kitty Cat from California. And we'll stay in Cali and say hi to Leslie in San Diego and Edna in LA. And last but not least, we have Jennifer from Luxembourg, Wisconsin. Jennifer says, try some spotted cow and please do a Wisconsin case. Yes, and yes, Jennifer, we will do both. Well,
Love
Jennifer,
the spotted cow.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Jennifer, you're actually in for a little bit of luck here today. While today's case does take place in Minnesota, there is a piece of this case that will take us to Wisconsin. So thank you to everybody for chipping into this week's beer fund. And if you want to buy us around for next week's show, go to truecrimegarage.com and click on the donate button.
And like always, we like your jib.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Untapped. Big shout out to and thank you to Aurelia for doing the helping us with the Facebook stuff.
And a big happy new year to everybody. We like your jib.
All right, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer, and let's talk some true crime.
This past Sunday night, 9 o'clock, did you know where your kids were? In St. Joseph, Minnesota, the Wetterling family thought they did. But their 11-year-old son, on his way back from a nearby convenience store, was abducted by a masked gunman. For 4 days, a massive search has been underway. Tonight, our David Lee Miller reports on that terrible crime that has brought terror to the country's heartland.
St. Joseph, Minnesota is the type of town where folks don't bother to lock the front door. A 2-hour drive north of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Here, the police chief doesn't even carry a gun. But now, everything is different. Sunday night, just outside of town, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling was abducted by a masked man with a gun. It is a crime that will forever change this community, and one that has terrorized Jacob's parents.
This shouldn't happen anywhere. It's the type of, it shouldn't happen anywhere. All I could think of was who would take a child away from their parents? I couldn't fathom it.
It was total shock, total disbelief. Even in talking with the sheriff's department here, they seem to be almost as amazed as we are.
We've taught him that people are good. We've worked for peace all our lives, and this is a real violent act. I don't understand it. He's bright. He's got a real clever sense of humor and quick mind. He's very, he plays goalie. He's cool under pressure. All these things give me hope that if there's an opportunity, this boy will be home.
Is he a survivor?
He's a survivor.
Jacob's disappearance is especially shocking because he was with his 10-year-old brother, Trevor, and an 11-year-old friend, Aaron Larson, when the abduction took place. According to the boys, they had just leased a videotape from this convenience store and were walking their bicycles down this road when suddenly a masked gunman appeared out of nowhere.
We were coming down this road here and we were just talking and everything, and then this guy just came out and he had a gun, I thought it was some kid pulling a prank on us or something, but it wasn't. And then he looked at Trevor and he told Trevor to turn off his flashlight, and then he told us he had a gun and he told us to turn around and go over into this ditch and put our bikes in there and lay down. Then he came over and he asked us all our ages, and then he told Trevor to run as fast as he could into the woods or else he'd shoot. Then he looked at me and then he grabbed Jacob and he told me to run as fast as I could into the woods or he'd shoot.
What did this man look like?
Well, he was all in black. He had a mask on and...
You couldn't see his face?
He had a nylon mask or some kind of mask.
Did Jacob say anything to the man?
Just his age.
When you ran, did you look back?
Yeah, once we got way down there.
What did you see?
Nothing. No, he wasn't there anymore.
Here at the County Communication Center, authorities have received more than 300 tips. And while so far nothing has panned out, they continue to be optimistic. Jacob will soon return home.
An awful lot just depends on the type of person that we're dealing with that abducted the boy. Some of them keep him around for quite a while, some of them don't. So we're hoping that this type of person is going to keep Jacob alive, and somewhere along the line that he's going to get a chance to get to a telephone or get away from him.
Despite a massive effort in the air and on the ground, police have few clues and don't even know what type of car Jacob's abductor used to flee the scene. Residents are understandably terrified and say children here in St. Joseph have lost a part of their youth.
I know my little boy, he's 5, and he won't go outside. Yesterday he didn't want to go out and play, and he was up last night, and it's scary for the kids. Anybody, really.
The Sheriff's Department, meanwhile, has established this command center to coordinate assistance from state investigators and the FBI. But despite all the manpower, authorities do not know why the boy was taken. So far, there has not been a demand for ransom, and the family has never received any type of threat. Dr. Wetterling is a chiropractor in town, who in this predominantly white, middle-class community heads up the local chapter of the NAACP. They are kind, gentle, caring people who want nothing more than the return of their son. Can you think of any reason anyone would want to harm your family or your son?
Nothing.
I would only say that we really want Jacob back. For Jacob's sake, for our sake, and for everyone's sake. Please, give him back to us.
There are so many people praying that if I were God, I would bring Jacob home safely very soon.
Tonight, the Wetterlings are asking for your help in locating Jacob. In a moment, we'll give out a special phone number. But first, here's the FBI profile of Jacob's abductor. They believe he's a white male between 25 and 35 years of age and may have attempted a similar but unsuccessful abduction in the recent past. Anyone who may have any information about Jacob's abduction is asked to call the Sheriff's Department Task Force at 612-259-3981. There is a $25,000 reward for information leading to his safe return. All tips will be kept confidential, and you can call collect. Once again, the number, 612-259-3981. Maury, I hope this is one story that's going to have a happy ending.
Back in August, we covered the case of Joshua Guimond. Now, it's not absolutely necessary to listen to that episode before this one, but if you haven't already, you might want to check that out. That's episode number 47. Anyway, the disappearance of Joshua and the disappearance of Jacob Wetterling, and because of the close proximity to one another, and some had suspected that maybe the two disappearances were connected. So when we covered the Joshua Guimond case, we received a lot of requests to cover the Jacob Wetterling case. Most of the time, our cases are mapped out, well in advance, so we didn't get to it. Shortly after this, there were all kinds of developments in the Jacob case. Now, Jacob's case never ever really left the news. It is arguably one of the most famous child abduction cases ever. So now there is this really big case, and it's really heating up in the news again. So I thought with it being in the news that much, that everybody would not be interested in us covering it. But then in late October, we covered the Johnny Gosch case. This is an abduction. The boy was never seen again, young teenage boy that was abducted. And in this case, we made reference to the Jacob Wetterling case. And once again, we received a lot of feedback from the True Crime Garage Army, again with requests for us to cover this case. So here we are, Captain, covering the Jacob Wetterling case.
I'm here too.
So today's case takes us to St. Joseph, Minnesota. And this is back in October 22nd, 1989, which is a Sunday evening. Jerry and Patty Wetterling are out at a dinner party, about 25 to 30-minute drive from their home. At home is their 11-year-old son, Jacob Wetterling, his 10-year-old brother, Trevor, their 8-year-old sister, Carmen, and their friend, Aaron Larson, who is 11 years of age as well. This case really takes me back, though. I hate to date myself here, Captain, but Jacob is pretty close in age to you and I.
Now you're dating me. Thanks a lot.
Well, Captain, he was a little older than us, but we, like Jacob, his siblings, and his friend Aaron, were all children of the 80s. I love the 80s. I mean, I was so young back then that everything seems very innocent looking back now. But remember when your parents would go out and they would leave you home alone, or even where there is someone there to watch you, a babysitter or maybe a relative? Parents left a phone number. They would write it down on a piece of paper and leave it on the countertop or by the phone and say, this is where we will be. This is the number for the restaurant, or this is the phone number for our friend's house.
Yeah.
If you need anything, call us at this number. And
Then you would also get the list of rules read to you, like you are not to leave the house, no fighting with your brother or sister, no food on the nice furniture.
Don't wear underwear on your head.
Well, this is exactly what Jerry and Patty Wetterling did before they went out to their dinner party. Well, sure enough, the kids come up with a great idea, and so they are going to call and ask Mom and Dad if they could go out for a bit. Their friend Aaron is going to stay the night that night. There was to be no school the next day. So they called because they want to go to the Tom Thumb store down the street. Now, for those of you too young to know this, back in the day, grocery stores and convenience stores did the greatest thing. Some of them would rent movies or even video games. And of course, this portion of the store is always the danger zone for parents because there's no way you're going to walk through that aisle without the child begging to take home a movie or a video game.
Yeah. I mean, this is time before cell phones and being able to access anything at your fingertips.
So Trevor calls the dinner party, interrupts the dinner party, and he asks to speak with his mother. And he's going
the 10-year-old.
Yeah, he's going to ask if they can go down to the Tom Thumb store to pick up a movie. Now, the mom says no. Patty says no. It's too late. It's after dark. This is not a trip that you should be making after dark. And, Trevor says, well, let me speak to Dad. The old, everybody's done that bit.
Right.
And I think my household, Dad was always a little easier to get to say yes than Mom. So I can certainly identify with Trevor here. He talks to his father, and Jerry agrees to let the boys go to the Tom Thumb store. He seems to be more concerned about it being dark rather than anything nefarious happening to them.
Right.
So they equip themselves with, bright clothing and a flashlight. And they've already mapped out the perfect plan. They have their sister at home, their little sister, who does not want to go to the store with them. And probably, the older boys don't want the little sister tagging along anyway.
Yeah.
So they've already made arrangements to have their neighbor girl, her name is Rochelle. She's 14 years old. She's going to come over and babysit their little sister, Carmen, while they will head down to the store to retrieve their movie. So the three boys set out for the Tom Thumb store, 2 of them on bikes and 1 on a scooter. This is just before 9 p.m., so it's dark out, and this is a country road, so no street lights. Probably the only lights you're going to see would be those from the houses, the house lights and lights near the Tom Thumb store.
I wonder if the older boys made the little kid do the scooter.
I think Trevor may have been on the scooter, yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's like...
Low man on the totem pole gets the scooter.
Yeah, you're lucky to be hanging out with us.
Yeah. So they go to the store. They rent a movie, The Naked Gun. And
good movie.
They are returning for home. And this is right around 9:15 p.m. when they are startled. When they see a man. This man, he is dressed in dark clothing. And he has some kind of face mask or something over covering his face. And he is armed with a handgun. And he kind of just pops up and appears out of nowhere. They're not really for sure where this man came from. The man tells the boys to stop. He then tells Trevor to turn off the flashlight that he is carrying. He has the boys push the bikes and the scooter in the roadside ditch. He tells them to lie down, face down in the ditch. He asks Trevor his age, to which Trevor replies 10. The man then asks Aaron his age. Aaron says 11.
Yeah.
And then he asks Jacob his age, and Jacob says 11. He tells Trevor to get up and run to the woods, but don't look back or he's going to shoot.
Yeah.
Then he kind of lifts up each of the 2 remaining boys' heads one at a time to get a look at their faces. He grabs Aaron's crotch and then tells Aaron to run to the woods and don't look back or I'll shoot. Then the man grabs Jacob by the arm, lifting him up a bit and drags him away.
And and the sexual assault onto Aaron was not reported originally.
Yeah, and so now the two boys have run to the woods. And Aaron will eventually catch up to the younger boy, Trevor. And by this time, the boys are in the woods, and they look back, but they don't see the man. And more importantly to them, their brother, their friend, Jacob, is gone as well. And this is just gone without a trace. They don't see anything.
Yeah, they don't see a vehicle.
By this point, the boys are only a couple blocks from their home, from the Wetterling home. as I understand it to be, this is a simple trip. It's really just like one country road and, you know, a turn here or there. The Wetterling house down to the Tom Thumb store is pretty much a straight shot. So Trevor and Aaron, they run to the Wetterling house. Once there, they tell the babysitter Rochelle what just happened, and she calls her father. Then the father calls 911, and he even puts Trevor on the phone to tell his account of what had just happened. The babysitter's father then calls Jerry and Patty Wetterling and tells them that 2 of the boys came home and Jacob has been taken and is still not home, and he has notified the police. The Wetterlings, of course, leave the dinner party immediately. Now, we said that a 911 call was placed, and on the receiving end of this call is the Stearns County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, by the babysitter's dad, Merle.
Correct. And the Sheriff's Department is on the scene within minutes. This is all happening very, very quickly. The report comes in quickly. The Sheriff's Department responds very quickly. The Sheriff's Department, they arrive and they see the bikes in the ditch, and they start searching the area for Jacob. They search the woods as well. And they're searching that night, and in the early morning hours, this is like around 3 a.m., they decide to call off the search. You know, they are searching in the dark, and in a very dark location, and hunting for clues. You know, if they can't immediately find the boy, at some point you wonder how much you're trampling over the crime scene, if you're losing any evidence, or if you're going to cause damage to any potential evidence. So they start searching again around 8 a.m. This is a full-on search deal here. We have, you know, a helicopter, ATVs, bloodhounds. The dogs track Jacob's scent to a gravel road. At this same spot, there are fresh shoe prints and tire tracks. So now we have the possibility of a car used in the abduction. Now we are going to do a dragnet here. This is when you start checking with anyone you can think of that could be involved in a particular crime and interview them to see where they were at the time of the crime was committed, as well as what they were doing, or if there was anyone with them that could back up their story. So if you have a burglary, you're going to interview all suspected burglars or persons convicted of breaking and entering. In this case of Jacob Wetterling having been abducted, the Sheriff's Department, they will set their dragnet for sex offenders and pedophiles.
Let's get into that after a quick.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you look forward to the holidays? Maybe you struggle with seasonal blues. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot, something to look forward to make you feel grounded, and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/garage today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/garage.
Canva presents True Crime of Design. In the office, Maya spots something unusual in the presentation.
What's this?
It was an off-brand font. Her coworker explains.
I added the font. I thought it was fun.
It was not. Maya solved it with Canva.
Open up Canva, one click, and the font is on brand. Easy.
Stay on brand and solve font crimes at canva.com, the home for every brand.
Rosetta Stone is the language learning program with a lasting impact. I've been using their app to learn French, and it's not just about memorizing words, but actually having real conversations. And it's not just French. They offer 25 languages. Right now, Rosetta Stone has an awesome holiday deal, 50% off their lifetime membership. Every language, unlimited access forever. For anyone keen on diving deep into a new language, check out rosettastone.com. It's a game changer.
Beer break. And we're back. Cheers, everybody. So where we left off at, Jacob was abducted. We now have 2 eyewitness accounts. We have the 911 call placed. We We have the cops out there now. We have a search going, and we also have the eyewitness accounts and what we're looking for in this suspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, think about this for a second. Put this in your mind. We have these young boys, 10, 11 years old, 3 of them, they're out together. They're having, a great day in every sense of the word up to this point because, we've read and heard about what they were doing that day.
Well, one, it's a Sunday, right? They don't have school the next day.
Right.
So it's a bonus day off. Also, your parents are going away. You got your buddy spending the night, so that's a fun thing. And then, and this is not uncommon. This is 89. This is not uncommon to be sent off to a grocery store down the street, or in my neighborhood we had a Big Bear, which is a grocery store that was about less than a mile away, and your parents might send you off with $20 to go get some snacks, and then right across the street from the Big Bear was a movie rental. And so it wasn't that uncommon to send your kid off. Even sometimes it would be a Friday night. It was dark, but your parents still seemed okay, especially if you had numbers. If it wasn't just you. If I would have said, "Hey, I just want to run to Big Bear and get some snacks," my parents probably wouldn't have let me. But if I had a friend spending the night, or 2 friends spend the night, or having a friend spend the night with one of my siblings hanging out, they're more likely to say, go out there and just be back pretty quickly.
Yeah, they had a great day. They had some kind of hockey thing earlier that day. They had watched the Minnesota Vikings football game, pizza for dinner, friends staying the night, no school the next day. Then this thing happens. And why is this, there are other child abductions that happen. This becomes huge news, though. And I think part of that is because of the severity and how scary the situation is. I mean, we're talking about, first of all, a stranger abducting a child is very rare, first of all. Usually when a child is taken, it's by somebody that they know or the family knows. So we have a stranger abduction here, which is very rare. But then on top of that, like the captain said, this is a witnessed abduction, which is extremely rare. This is not a situation where you have, little Timmy didn't come home. He went out on his own and he didn't come home. Well, he's probably lost, or maybe he left on his own accord. No, this is 2 boys saying, our brother, our friend was taken by gunpoint. This is immediate danger, immediately scary. And the abduction itself is somewhat sexual in nature as well.
Yeah. With the friend being grabbed in the genital. I mean, that's, I think, especially in 1989, a lot of the reports were, hey, this boy was taken, and by the way, we have no ransom note, we have nobody calling. And that, it seems to me, in the 70s and 80s, the first thought was always, why did they take this kid, and was it for ransom? And now we have this situation where we do have a sexual assault at the crime scene, and so now we should assume that this is not taking a kid hostage for ransom. This guy is taking this kid for sexual acts, and so then what is going through the parents' head at that point?
Well, and you think if your kids are good, if your kids are smart, this kind of thing's not going to happen. And as a child, you think, if you do certain things, these things are not going to happen. We're talking about things like, tell your parents where you are, tell your parents what you are doing. They did that. They made the extra effort to reach out to their parents and ask for permission to go to this store. And they even arranged for a babysitter to come over and watch the younger sibling. That sort of thing's not going to happen. And then one thing you touched upon too, strength in numbers. We're always taught strength in numbers. When you go off to an amusement park or somewhere when you're a child, yeah, you might get to go off on your own, but it's always because you have somebody with you.
Right.
And
or that your parents just don't care much about you.
And then they just let you off on your own.
Yeah.
But this was 3 boys leaving together that should have returned together, and there should be no reason. You wouldn't expect a child abduction to be witnessed like this.
Well, it's not like Jacob made a mistake.
No, not at all.
It wasn't like they're in the renting a movie and Jacob just happened to strike up a conversation with the wrong guy. All three of the boys could have been captured. And I think it's strange. I mean, like in the account when he says, "Oh well," he pulled both of us up and looked at our faces, and then it's almost like the guy chose, and then it's also all by gunpoint.
Yeah.
And look, there's no reason for me to believe that the story is not true. I would say the only thing is if he threw in my only question is, one, if he threw in the gun, but we got the other account from the brother. So, but sometimes it would be like, well, we couldn't do anything because he had a gun. But then like maybe also if there's a little fudge in the story, was he actually masked? Or does he just feel bad because he can't tell you what the guy looks like? Chances are his story is correct in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree so as well. Let's back up for a second here because something else happened that night that Jacob was taken. Whomever came up upon the boys, he encountered them on this dark country road. But this is right at the end of a family's driveway. This is the Rassier family, but this is a country road, so the driveway is about a quarter of a mile long. And on October 22nd, 1989, Dan Rassier, a grown man in his 30s, he's living with his parents, and he's home alone. His parents were away vacationing in Europe. Sometime after the sheriff's department began their search for Jacob, Dan is awakened. It's about 10:45 p.m., and his dog is barking as there is some disturbance at the end of the Rassier driveway. Dan looks out the window, and he sees several flashlights moving about in the darkness near the family's woodpile. And he assumes someone or someones are trying to steal wood from their property. Because he believes that he's outnumbered, Dan calls 911 to report the incident. The dispatcher informs Dan that there has been a kidnapping that was recently reported on that road in which he lives, and the lights he is seeing is that of the sheriff's department searching for the boy. Dan then goes to where the sheriffs are and has a brief conversation with one of the deputies and tells the deputy that he will go look around the area himself and attempt to assist in the search. Now let's go to Monday, October 23rd. We had mentioned that the search picked up where the sheriff's department had left off the previous night, early that morning. And now this is around 8 a.m. on Monday, and the search for Jacob continues, the search for the abducted boy, the search for the abductor. This continues. Now, on this same day, Dan Rassier, first off, Dan is a music teacher at one of the local schools. Dan is called out of class, and the sheriff's department, they search Dan's car, and they question him for about 45 minutes. And this is kind of where this ends for Dan on that day. Now, 6 days later, investigators search the Rassier farm. Dan takes a lie detector test, to which he is never told the results of the test, which I don't think is a strange thing. We have seen in some cases that we've covered, like the West Memphis 3, where they immediately tell you, you failed this thing miserably. Right. And that's where they grill you further. My guess is that he probably passed the lie detector test, and that's why they didn't tell him of the results. But
you're probably freaking out at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as you're a music teacher, so just even being suspect of this crime could cost you your job, cost you your livelihood.
Well, and when you're being called out of class, and you get there and there's a sheriff there, you probably assume I'm being interviewed because I live right by where this took place. And had I seen anything, this is my opportunity to tell them, even though I went down there and spoke to a deputy that night and they didn't seem very interested in talking to me at that point. It could be that the sheriff's department really expected to find the boy that night, is what I think. I think they thought maybe they'd find him in the woods or find him nearby. I don't think this is something that they were familiar with, or maybe having the capability of dealing with it.
Well, and then the music teacher's probably freaking out because he's going, I live with my parents, and my parents just happen to be gone the day that this kid goes missing. Now my career possibly is in jeopardy. Like we said, I mean, this is 89. It's not like, I think people are more understanding of that if you knew somebody or you lived in a close proximity, you might be pulled in for questioning. I think that's more likely that people understand that nowadays. In 89, they're probably going, this guy kills children or abducts children.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious to Dan at this point that he is become part of the investigation, whether he likes it or not. And he tries to tell the Stearns County Sheriff's Department that he is innocent. And that he was home alone that night, but he was busy. He was sorting through his extremely large record collection. And he also tells them that...
Well, I wonder if he was doing one of those things. Have you seen High Fidelity?
Yes.
Where he'd like decide, hey, tonight I'm going to reorganize in alphabetical order. And then the next day he'd say, I'm going to reorganize based on when I bought the record.
Yeah, and I think you might be right there, because he says something like he was filling out index cards or something. He's making some kind of catalog of his extremely large record collection. But, he also tells them that he called 911 that night, that he had placed a call to 911 that night, and that should prove that he's innocent.
Well, that doesn't prove anything.
Well, but see it from Dan's seat here. This is the way he's thinking. The investigators tell Dan that the 911 call actually proves the exact opposite, stating that he manufactured the idea that someone was stealing wood from the property as an excuse to call 911, making him look innocent, and that on the call he sounded far too nervous for the real issue to be theft of firewood.
Well, he's a music teacher, right? So, I mean, he's probably not like a big MMA fighter or something, and he probably was scared.
Dan also tells investigators that they should be looking for a vehicle. That he had seen a vehicle turning around in his driveway the evening that Jacob was taken. Dan is able to give a very vague description of the car. And because of the distance, he did not get a good look at the driver.
Right, because his house is so far back from off the road. Again, if you're the cops, I mean, put yourself in the cops' position. We got this guy that maybe he's a little funny, lives with his parents. He's an older gentleman in his 30s, living with his parents. He's a music teacher. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But then you make a 911 call saying, hey, guys, somebody was stealing wood possibly.
Yeah, I got people on my property that I don't know who they are with flashlights.
Right. And then you're going, hey, and then there's a flashlight. The kids were holding a flashlight. So is he just mixing up events? But then he's then telling you, hey, you might want to check out this car that I saw. Well, you didn't mention the car the day before, because if you went out and you said, hey, Sheriff, by the way, there was this car that I saw earlier. You didn't bring that up the day before.
Right.
So I think that's why they started zeroing in more on him.
My guess is that he probably was not given any information about the abduction. Right. They didn't say this is what happened, and it sounds like they didn't even care to talk to him that night. So I don't see him going out of his way to say, oh, by the way, I happen to have seen a vehicle turn around in my driveway. Now, I'm sure that he told him that during the 45 minutes of questioning
right. I mean,
on that Monday.
That makes logical sense to me and you, but I think you got an 11-year-old boy that was taken by gunpoint. These cops have to do everything they can to just pick a direction and run in it as fast as you can until you hit a brick wall, and then pick another direction and then keep running in that direction as well.
But I also think that at this point, Dan is not an actual suspect. He's somebody that they're interested in talking to him, but I don't believe that he's any form of a suspect. And then he's mentioning this car, and I can't see the driver. And here's a description of the vehicle. You should be looking for this car because this took place about the same time as what the kid would have been abducted. And, this to me seems like a good enough lead, because the sheriff's department found Jacob's scent near those fresh tire tracks.
Right.
And they decided it was most likely that Jacob was taken by vehicle, which is extremely plausible because that's how these things happen, especially when you're out on this dirt country road, and, Jacob should be, if he's not there, then he has to have been taken by vehicle, or he would be in one of the
it seems
nearby homes.
Right. It seems like, an individual was driving by, saw these three boys, saw it as an opportunity, or possibly even knew these boys, saw them at the video store, and then said, well, on their way back, I'm going to grab one of them. Parks the vehicle, gets out of the vehicle, then walks to wherever they are, grabs one of the boys, they walk back to the vehicle, and then they leave by that vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he ambushes them on their way back. He's away from his vehicle.
Right, and if he's wearing all black and has a black, nylon mask of some nature, that they didn't even see him come creeping up on him.
And not only are you exactly right, because we know the history of this case,
right.
But think about this too. This is a well thought out plan. This and I agree with you.
Well, I don't know if it's a well thought out plan.
Well, here's what I mean by that. Okay, I understand that the assailant probably saw an opportunity and took advantage of that opportunity. Mm-hmm. However, there has been some planning done in this. He unless he just happens to be wearing dark clothes,
mm-hmm.
that he just happens to have a mask or something to cover his face,
that
he just happens to drive around with a gun in his car, and that he's got the foresight to decide, you know what, I'm going to park my car elsewhere. I'm going to put myself someplace else where I can take one of the boys so that the two that I'm leaving behind, they can't see my vehicle, or they don't see my vehicle.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of this, I don't think it's actually planned. I think this is just part of the guy's lifestyle. This is what he does. He abducts children, and he's been setting his life up, to put himself in those opportunities. And when those opportunities arise, well, I got my van or car or whatever I'm driving, and I have all my tools, to abduct these kids in that van.
In the coming weeks and months, the sheriff's department and the Wetterlings would continue to go to the media asking for tips and leads, or to see if anyone had seen Jacob. And the tips, I'll put that in quotation marks, the tips pour in. Mm-hmm. People say they have seen Jacob. People call about strange vehicles, strange men. So the police are tracking all of these tips. They even set up a phone with a recording device on it at the Wetterling home so that Jerry and Patty could record the phone calls that are coming in. And then we have the psychics, Captain. Wannabe psychics love missing persons cases. I think you and I
not always just wannabe psychics.
Well, some legitimate psychics.
Yeah, if you believe in that thing, I do.
I'm not discrediting anybody by name here or as a whole. But what I'm saying is, I see a lot of wannabe psychics.
No, I understand that. But what I just want to go on record to state that the majority of detectives I've talked to, they use psychics, and the majority of the detectives that I have talked to said that after they found the body, or the recent one, we're talking, drinking coffee. I just said, hey, have you ever used psychics? And then, yeah. And every time I do, everybody in the police department makes fun of me. So he went to see one of the psychics. She told him all this stuff. None of it really made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Then they find the girl. And after he finds the girl, everything that the psychic made sense. Everything that she presented made sense after they found the girl. And now everybody in that department doesn't give him shit anymore because this lady has been right multiple times.
Was this the skipper that you were talking to, or a different
detective?
Okay, because the funny thing here is, I thought
it was a sheriff. It was not a detective.
But. Okay, I thought you were referring to the skipper at first, who we both know, and he's a very skeptical person. He does not.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say he doesn't believe in a whole lot of mysticism or maybe even spirituality? I don't know, but he has told me that on occasion he's spoken to a psychic, which blew my mind because I thought that he wouldn't take a phone call or put any effort into that at all. But he said from his perspective that he didn't mind talking to psychics because he wanted an outside of the box kind of opinion, or maybe there was something that they hadn't thought of yet, a possibility that they hadn't thought of. Now, in this particular case, the detectives, some of them, one in particular, said that he did talk to psychics because he wanted to know, how did they come to their conclusion? Are they really just holding on to information that they know firsthand rather than something they dreamt or believed to have happened. They want to know, is this person actually coming forth with information because they've actually done something bad?
Right. And look, I'm not suggesting that people go, speak with a psychic on every little thing. I'm just saying that detectives do use this to, kind of drum up some different ideas, just like we talked about with the skipper.
Now, here's the thing, Captain. I think you and I have covered enough of these cases to know that the psychics seem to come out of the woodwork for murder cases, but especially for these disappeared or abducted cases, they really come at the family and come at law enforcement with ideas and thoughts and dreams that they have had.
Yeah, well, and
visions.
If you look at this, we talked about the Brian Schaefer case, and when they had the psychic kids do that case, one of the things I was freaked out about, and now maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know, but when they said that this guy was in this building and then he left the building and came back. Now, we know that to be factual later. Now, were those kids fed that information? I'm not really for sure.
The host in that particular incident claims that the psychic kids knew nothing of the actual incident. They were taken to a location and told somebody disappeared from this location, now go.
Right. And so if you're going to call a psychic to try to get answers for your life, I'd say don't do that. Maybe try a therapist, maybe have some mentor or counselor. But I think there's nothing wrong with using psychics in this capacity. But on the other hand, there's been so many psychics, especially with these YouTube videos, these guys claiming that, I know where this missing person is, and it's based off of nothing. And it's so they get a bunch of clicks on their YouTube video. And those people are pieces of shit, Yeah,
well, I will tell you when the world will end, the exact date. And why, and then when it doesn't happen, I'll disappear for a couple of years and give you a new date.
Right.
But so in this particular case, there were a ton of psychics that came out of the woodwork here and presented their thoughts, visions, theories, and a lot of them were communicating with the parents, with Jerry and Patty Wetterling.
Well, and some of that is just wrong too, because if you are a bullshit artist, and maybe some of these people actually think they have visions. But I just think some of it is wrong to, give the parents false hope.
Exactly. I mean, I would say reach out to the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Don't bother the family. They're going through something here that nobody should have to experience, and getting false hope is really kicking somebody while they're at their lowest.
Right.
Now, we said that there was a whole bunch of psychics that came forward to law enforcement, to the Wetterlings.
Hold on. We just got off on a crazy tangent. Well, sorry about that.
I'm actually leading somewhere with this.
I have no.
Okay. So there is one such psychic that came about amongst the sea of psychics that presented their theories, their thoughts, their visions. The Wetterlings had psychics calling the house at all hours. Some even would go to the house to meet the parents of Jacob. Yeah. Some asking for one of Jacob's toys or an article of clothing to better help them channel Jacob or Jacob's spirit. But one psychic that does go to the home of the Wetterlings is a man in his early 40s from Wisconsin, and his name is Vernon Seitz. Vernon actually visits Patty Wetterling on 2 occasions.
Well, look, when you name your kid Vernon, he's going to grow up to be like a librarian, or he's going to grow up to be a psychic.
Well, he visits Patty Wetterling on 2 occasions. And on one of those occasions, one of those visits, he gives her a painting that he had painted of Jacob.
Okay.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, you and I have heard some of the recorded calls. Captain, these are all false leads that we know of now. Some of them calling the Wetterlings in the middle of the night and saying some, absolutely horrible things, telling Jacob's parents that he has been killed and how he's been killed according to their visions, or he's alive, but he's being held captive and he's been raped repeatedly. I mean, I don't know how a parent in this type of situation has the strength to go on. I guess the hope that your kid could still be alive, and the thought that I better be here doing something and of sound mind so that if he is still alive, I can help somehow, some way.
What a helpless feeling, though. I mean, it's like, if your kid falls down, and then you can clean up the cut, and you can comfort them, but your kid's just gone, and I couldn't imagine the thoughts that were racing through your heads, and then there'd be a part of you that would just want to hit the streets and just start looking and start driving around. And I think personally for me, I'd go crazy. It'd be 10 years of me driving around looking for answers. I mean, I think it would just be so horrific.
Unfortunately, helpless is the word.
Yeah.
I think that's how you feel in this situation. You're helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Your child is injured, you nurse them back to health. If they're ill, you nurse them back to health. If they're gone and taken from you, you're helpless. There's nothing you can do. You feel like there's nothing you can do in the situation.
Well, not only the helplessness of the parents, but your little brother was with you. I mean, if you're the little brother, your older brother of a year or more, because one was 10 and one was 11, but I mean, it could, it's like he could be a year and a few months older, but it's like, so your older brother, you possibly your hero or whatever, he's just been taken from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you witness all that, not to mention, hey, lay down in this ditch, not to mention run to this woods or I'm going to shoot you. You're 10 years old. I mean, I couldn't even imagine that. Or on the other side of things, it's your best friend. You're spending the night at your best friend's house, and he, like same thing, and you have to deal with the whole thing, and then you have to deal with this guy grabbing your genitals. You got to deal, this guy stole your best friend away, and then the stuff that he had to be going through. Like, now we're searching for my friend, and I hope he's found. But this is probably all the kids are talking about in the community.
Well, and it's survivor's guilt. Even though you don't know the outcome of your friend or brother being taken, you have this survivor's guilt, and all these things are probably going through your head that why was he taken and not me?
Right.
Or what could I have done differently at that exact moment to change the current situation that we're in? Maybe should I have not run?
Right.
Maybe should I have pushed the issue? Maybe should I have looked the man in the face?
Right. Should I fought him off? Yeah.
All these things.
Or tried to.
And like you said, it's the brother, feeling guilty, and it's the best friend, Well,
and then you got the parents on the idea of the mom said no,
mm-hmm.
and then and then Trevor went back to the dad. And the dad said yes.
Yeah, that absolutely. I mean, this is a heartbreaking story anyway, but that portion of the story breaks my heart every time because, when people are in a situation where they can't control anything, some people want somebody to blame. And the father did absolutely nothing wrong here. There's no reason why this should have happened at all.
No.
Nobody could have foreseen this happening.
Well, and nowadays, I mean, people just don't let their kids do these things. But, we're also raising a bunch of monsters now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that was one of the best parts of my childhood was run down to the Big Bear and pick up some snacks. I'd always get fudge rounds for some reason because I think it was $1, and then you'd eat like 20 fudge rounds and drink Coca-Cola. But it's sad that we live in a world that we can't just send your 10 and 11-year-old kid a couple blocks away to run a movie.
But again, stranger with child abductions are extremely rare. This isn't something that's happening,
Yeah, but right. But also, I understand what parents are doing though. Don't run to the store. Don't be by yourself. Don't play outside without anybody watching, because now we're not giving anybody an opportunity. And let's face it, man, there's just more sickos today.
Well, this situation, there's nothing that the parents should have done differently. There's nothing that they could have done differently. This is not their fault.
Right.
No. They're not at fault here. The brother's not at fault.
Jacob's not at fault, like I said.
Right. What could have Trevor done differently? And you pulled clips for our trailer at the beginning of the show, and you hear the brother. I assume that's Trevor saying that.
No, that's his friend.
Is that Aaron saying
that's Aaron.
that I thought this is just some like older kid playing a prank on us or something?
Yeah.
The kids they're too young to even understand the situation that they're in.
Well, and one of the things that I thought was interesting, I was watching this YouTube video, and it was a report from back in '89, and they were walking the same road with Aaron and Trevor. And to see the news anchor right beside them, you realize how small these kids are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's sad that we have these monsters out there.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit here, Captain, because Jacob's case, it goes cold in a sense for some time. It's still in the news, especially locally. The anniversary, that October 22nd date every year brings the reminders to the public locally and nationally, but it won't be until about 2003 when the sheriff's department get the phone call that they have been waiting on. Mm-hmm. In 2003, a local man contacted the authorities, and he's got a story for them. He tells them he was in the area the night that Jacob was abducted. The man had been listening to a police scanner and had heard about the missing boy, and he decided to drive to the scene. He told them that he had got close enough with his car, he's driving in his car, he got close enough that he saw the bikes and the scooter in the ditch. He did speak with a deputy that night, asking if the sheriffs had seen or knew about the bikes, and the deputy said yes, they had.
Now, are you hip to these police scanners?
My grandfather had one growing up, which I always thought was kind of cool that he listened to it. I don't really have any kind of experience with them other than that.
Thought about getting one. Might be kind of neat.
Chasing ambulances and stuff?
No, just,
just to hear what's going on.
Just listening in.
You live in a suburb, so I know. It could be like strange calls. But Captain, this is the phone call that they've been waiting for, because this man and his car could possibly account for the vehicle seen by Dan Rassier that night. And this could account for the fresh tire tracks near the abduction site as well. The man could not be 100%, he couldn't 100% remember the make and the model of the tires that he was driving that night.
No shit, Sherlock.
Well, this is 2003.
Well, and this is my problem with the whole thing. So you come out, how many years later? 14
about
years
14
later?
years later, yeah.
Well, you come out 14 years later and you go, hey, guys, I got a story to tell you. Really?
Well, you want a little more background on this?
Yeah, I want to know why it took him 14 years.
Why he was like, oh, I've been busy. Couldn't make a phone call. No, what happened was he
had a lot of laundry to do.
Being a 14 years older than what he was at the time, he was at a party. Okay, he was at like some work function or something like that, and he was talking to somebody that is in law enforcement, maybe FBI or something. I don't know the background. I think he was a marshal, the person he was talking to. And he tells, somehow the Jacob Wetterling case comes up in conversation. Yeah. And he says to the marshal, he says,
those are our people though, right? I mean, think about every time we're at a bar, it's so great when a true crime thing actually comes up. And then we don't have to feel like a weirdo.
He's in this conversation.
Okay.
And he says, I lived in the area, and as a matter of fact, I heard the call go out on the police scanner, so I drove to the location. I actually saw the bicycles, and I told a deputy that night, do you guys know about these bicycles over here? Do you need any help? Should I get you the bicycles? Should I show you where they are? And he said that the deputy told him, we are aware of the bicycles. We know what's going on. It'd be best if you just go home.
Right.
So he went home, and he was never contacted. They didn't take his name, phone number, anything to contact him in the future.
And they should have.
Exactly. And he says that, I just assumed that everything I knew, they knew. Mm-hmm. And so I never contacted.
That's not a bad assumption.
And the marshal says, well, this case is ongoing. It's a cold case. It seems like nothing. What you're telling me sounds like not a whole lot of information here, but you should contact the police and talk with them.
At least tell them what you know.
And he actually said, maybe it was because of the, because of how he was greeted with it that night, that he felt uncomfortable calling the police department, discussing this with them. And the marshal said, well, I know some guys over there, and let me arrange this for you, because the marshal thought that this was something that the sheriff's department needed to hear.
Well, and we've all been there. We've all done that, where we get pulled over by a cop and their attitude is bad. Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I'm all for law enforcement. I'm all for law enforcement doing their job. They're great people, but let's just remember, it's serve and protect. That's what you're signing up for. Not to harass, not to, try to teach everybody a lesson, not to, if you were picked on in high school, there should be a rule. If you were picked on in high school, you shouldn't be able to be a cop. There should be a rule about that. But no, it's to serve and protect, and you don't have to serve and protect with a negative attitude towards people. And if this guy, maybe they thought, okay, we got this crime scene and we don't want anybody to mess it up. I get that. Go home, please. But this guy obviously thought, well, for 14 years, these guys gave me some attitude and they probably know what I know.
Yeah.
So what does it matter?
Or at the very least, they don't care. The information I have is not valuable to them or their investigation. So what am I,
Right. Just a nice reminder. Just be nice to people. That goes for everybody. Just try to be kind. Okay. Don't be walking around like a dick face.
Well, and if what the captain says should be true, if you pick on every kid in your school, if you don't grow up to be the police officer, then nobody is allowed to be a police officer. So again, the first thing that the sheriff's department, they want to know are, what kind of tires did you have on that vehicle? Do you remember? Because we have a photograph of the tire tracks.
We have tire tracks, yeah.
And if we can track down a model that's similar or the same of that tire, we can conclude that you were the one that left the tire tracks here. Now, because the impressions were so, they constantly say fresh tire tracks. Well, but one thing I think that they mean on that is not that they were just recently left there, that on top of that, they probably came from newer tires given the amount of the impression. Mm-hmm. Because their follow-up question, when he says, I don't remember what kind of tires I was driving on, they say, well, do you remember if they were old or new tires? And he said, I can tell you that I had recently replaced the tires on that vehicle.
Okay.
So now they believe that this accounts for the vehicle that Dan Rassier had seen, the one that they were kind of looking for. They were looking, even though they had questioned Dan and made him feel like a suspect, they were still looking for this vehicle. Now they believe they've tracked down this vehicle, and this man is innocent. He's not the person that took Jacob. So they can account for several things that happened that night that they were looking for. And since they could clear this man of any wrongdoing, this now meant that they believed that the abductor had most likely fled on foot with Jacob. So this now means that we are going to look for not only a suspect that is local, but someone that is so local that he would have had the ability to take Jacob into the attacker's home, into his home and or property, and had the ability to conceal Jacob. So once again, the sheriff's department has Dan Rassier in their sights. Dan lived probably the closest to the abduction site than anybody. He had no alibi for his whereabouts or to vouch for what he was doing prior to him talking with the police that night.
Right.
And he not only, he was left home alone that night. And furthermore, according to his own story, he's roughly a quarter of a mile from the crime scene.
Right. So if the suspect left on foot, then, here's our closest suspect.
Yeah. So once again, Dan Rassier is finding himself in the hot seat of this investigation.
Right. And I get all that. But there's another part of me that just goes, okay, well, you found tire prints, and that was not of the suspect's tire prints. But that doesn't mean that he fled on foot. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just don't have the tire prints. Well, maybe the person never left the road. Maybe the person just put on their blinkers, walked out, grabbed the kid, put him in the car, and took off.
Well, there's been a lot of people to throw scrutiny at the sheriff's department because of this issue, because now we've taken Dan Rassier, and not only was he once somebody that we were interested in talking to regarding this investigation and regarding this crime, now he seems to be the most likely person. Now the sheriff's department has made him let's call a suspect. They never call him a suspect, but they're treating him.
Yeah, but he was a suspect.
Right. They're treating him like a suspect. But not only that, it seems like they've narrowed their vision to the point where they're honing in on Dan Rassier completely.
Right. And what I said in the first place is the cops need to, pick a path, pick a direction, run as fast as you can until you hit the brick wall. So 14 years ago, they didn't do that. They didn't. They should have looked at Dan from every angle, did as much as they could, and he's either our guy or he's not a suspect.
I absolutely agree with that statement. They should have done that in the beginning. The problem is that they didn't. Now, where I don't fault them and where I don't think we should have thrown scrutiny at the sheriff's department is because a lot of people were saying, well, a new sheriff took over about the same time. And so the new sheriff says that we're going to spend a good amount of time on Jacob's
2003?
case. Yeah, roughly around that time. So the new sheriff kind of, they've set their sights on the investigation now on Dan Rassier. But here's where I think that they're fine to do that. Because
no, it's fine.
Because here's the thing. Like you said, run till you hit a brick wall. Unfortunately, they didn't do things properly in the beginning, in my opinion.
Right.
But they've been hitting a brick wall for the last 14 years. Right. So then what you do is you have new sets of eyes. These are probably, you can assume that there's some new investigators on this case by this time. You have
new technology.
You have this person that comes forward that can account for this ghost car that Dan Rassier says he saw. So now you're pouring back over the information and you're going, what did we miss? What did we get wrong? Well, we thought there was a car. Maybe we've got this whole thing wrong the whole time because there was not a car.
Right.
Maybe this guy's been right under our thumb the entire time and we just we didn't see him because we assumed there was a car. Now we have this new information. I don't blame them for changing gears here and pivoting and focusing on Dan Rassier.
Sometimes you get down that path and you hit a brick wall. And then sometimes you get a little more information and you go down that path again. And when you hit that brick wall, it collapses, and then and that's where your suspect is. I mean, we see that time and time again, but yeah, it just seems like they, it's small town, 1989. Seems like they just made some mistakes here and there, and that's going to look. We're human, so we're going to make mistakes. Not every podcast that we put out is perfect. I mean, most of them are, but especially this one. But yeah, so I can't blame them too much. I mean, I'm sure their intentions were to get this right and to get this solved. All right, so I mean, we're only at 2003 in this case, and we know that there's more information that came out in 2016.
And a whole bunch of stuff between that.
Right. So we got. Can you stick around for a little bit, and we'll just knock out another podcast real quick?
I got an hour or so.
All right, so we got a recommended reading for this?
Yes, I want to recommend this week Hometown Killer. This is a similar story to the one that we're telling today. This is about a case that took place in the early 90s in Springfield, Ohio. The author calls it the All-American Town, much like where Jacob was from. This is the Hometown Killer, a peaceful community stalked by a remorseless slayer. And you can pick that up by going to our website, truecrimegarage.com. Click on the recommended page. You will see Hometown Killer as well as all of our other recommended books. We will be right back tomorrow in the garage reporting more. Well, we're going to do it tonight.
Well, we're going to record it tonight. I'll try to have it edited by tomorrow.
Sounds good. And until tomorrow, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
Canva presents True Crime of Design. In the office, Maya spots something unusual in the presentation.
What's this?
It was an off-brand font. Her coworker explains.
I added the font. I thought it was fun.
It was not. Maya solved it with Canva.
Open up Canva, one click, and the font is on brand. Easy.
Stay on brand and solve font crimes at canva.com, the home for every brand.